Well, I think the starting point that we took in the ministry, and I think this is not a new position, is that the light touch approach with the internet has worked, and we believe that can continue to work because the mass of people out there which are engaging online, using it for various purposes, we believe that good sense can prevail if it's encouraged in some way towards a certain direction. I think the ministry believes that the last thing that we should not do is for it to be a top-down, because if it's a top-down process, it will mean that it becomes an instruction and something which in some way the public will look towards us to enforce. If it's a bottoms-up process, because the space is so wide and there are so many players, certain degree of give and take will have to take place, a certain degree of moderation will have to take place. In some of the discussions that we have had with people who've actually submitted ideas to us, because when this was made public in the addendum to the presidential address last year, we had a couple of individuals who came forward to email to us that they like to participate in this process. And so in a sense, we took a certain risk. I would agree with the sentiment of your question, that whether this will work or not. But the fact that there were people out there who were prepared to contribute to that process shows that there are people out there who wants to own the internet and to make sure that it doesn't get killed by all the sort of the downside, that it can be a force for good, and they are prepared to sort of play that process. So in a sense, I suppose it has evolved, and we believe that if there are enough moderating voices within the internet to decide what is good, what is not acceptable, we think it will work. But having said that, I think we must always believe that a code of conduct, again, is not something which you can enforce. It is something in which you encourage people to adopt as good practice. And we hope it will evolve over time with active participation with as many groups as possible. The government has a stake in this, obviously. And so we will continue to engage not only the online community, but people who have an interest in this, to see how this code of conduct can be shaped. But I certainly believe, and the ministry certainly believe, that it can be done, because we believe that out there are enough voices that can, sort of, in a sense, balance out each other to find a common ground among the various users. That was the internal thinking within the ministry.
Afternoon, Minister. My name is Lau Juni from Nanyang Technological University. You mentioned the 100 sites, and the 100 sites actually have been quite sort of controversial. They've been called since the days of the National Internet Advisory Committee, the legal subcommittee. I was part of that. We also proposed to remove the list of 100 sites. I mean, after all, what is 100 sites in the days of today's internet? August 13, you may remember that group also called for the removal of 100 sites. And recently, the most recent list of recommendations, the AIMS committee also recommended. So, and the 100 sites really is a drop in the ocean. And a lot has been written about it. Would there be any removal anytime soon?
Not something on my agenda at the point in time. Obviously, we have to evolve with the times, and I agree with you that the 100 sites is a drop in the ocean. But if you trace back the logic of the idea, it was basically symbolic to show that we are interested in ensuring that what gets sort of fed online into Singaporean homes are healthy and wholesome. But to a large extent, we know that we cannot block all the sites. It's just not possible. I think the symbolism is to signal to the wider community that you should also take responsibility for this by implementing your own filters, which are offered by the ISPs. And so my sense is that at this point in time, it remains as a symbol that we want to encourage healthy, wholesome content on the internet, and therefore the responsibility is just not on government, but I think on the wider community. But certainly I agree with you, this is something that we have to look at as we evolve with the times.
Mr. Minister, I guess this is an extension of the question Patrick had asked earlier about the code of conduct.
Yes.
I want you to focus a little on libel laws. Now, Singapore is famous for having quite tough libel laws, which are quite strongly enforced. I think we in the media face this problem. It is we have to deploy resources to deal with it. But online, when it comes to online, the situation is, as you described, a light touch, where you have not only defamation but even abuse freely flowing online. some people look at this and say this is an anomaly. People can get away with all kinds of stuff online, which they can't in the print. And it's the same people reading it. So do you see this as an anomaly, and do you think something should be done about it?
Well, you must have heard that recently the three ministries have announced that we are reviewing our legislation, MHA, MICA and MINLAW coming together to look at laws which can apply online. We do have laws now that deal with criminal intimidation, be it in the real space or the cyberspace. But there are cases of cyber stalking, cyber harassment, cyber abuse, that really there's a bit of a gap there. And we're looking at how we can enact some legislation that will allow, as you rightly pointed out, reprieve for some of these people who have been abused. We're studying this very carefully because on the one hand, we do not want to curtail the kind of power that the internet has offered to a lot of individuals to do a lot of good things. But on the other hand, I agree with you with the abuses taking place. What is it that we can do? At the moment, when we work with some of the providers, we encourage some of the providers to do some kind of moderation, in which is being done by some of the companies. Again, it's not a directive from the ministry, but it's good practice. But once the laws are enacted, we have to see how far it will extend. We hope to finish the review by the end of this year, and certainly there will be public consultation because this affects all of us, right? Everybody from the top right down to the bottom, because anybody can be abused, anybody can be, nasty things can be said about him or her online, and you must be able to have a chance to basically address that or deal with that. So I'm not sure in which direction it will take place because it's still being looked at the staff level, but certainly the three ministers have come together and we want to see how best we can enact this legislation without having to sort of kill the internet, because that's not our end goal. We want the internet to flourish because we think it's a very good platform. So I don't have an answer for you at this point in time, but we hope to be able to finish it by the end of the year before we have some public consultation on how this piece of legislation will be shaped.